Hey, everybody, and thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Heroic Efforts. This is Andy here, just coming to talk to you about a very, very exciting new release from No More Talking Productions. My debut novel, What We Find Back Home, has just hit Amazon and is available for purchase now. It's a supernatural ghost story unlike any other, and I think you all would really, really enjoy it. So please support the book. It's the first fictional No More Talking production. Thanks for buying.
Get down there, little man.
Oh, that's my heat seeker.
I'll bet it is.
Okay, Vampire Anatomy 101. Crosses in running water don't do dick, so forget what you've seen in the movies. You use a stake, silver, or sunlight. You know how to use one of these?
Nope. But I damn sure learned quick.
Safety's off, rounds already chambered. Silver hollow point filled with garlic. You aim for the head or the heart. Anything else is your ass.
Hey! I'm gonna rip your fucking head off! Wait a minute. You use me as bait?
Get over it. Still heavy. You're so big.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Heroic Efforts. Thank you for joining us once more. We are pleased to have you back again. I am one of your hosts, Andy Foreman, and I am sitting here with Mr. Martin Fisher.
Bloodsucker Martin Fisher, the Daywalker himself, is here.
Hell yeah. And we are also sitting here with Mr. Nick Talamante.
What's happening, everybody?
And today we are going to be talking about what is not even arguably, what is the birth of the modern superhero film, Wesley Snipes' original 1998 Blade. We are excited to talk about this because now we actually get to talk about something we're happy to be watching after last week's episode. So thank you all for coming back. This is the exact opposite of last week. We are going to be talking all about...
Say that again.
Yeah. Well, after last week, we knew Nick needed a palate cleanser, so we're like, let's do something good, or something inarguably good. So... but yes, we're going to be talking
fucking-tastic, actually.
Fantastic,
exactly.
if you will.
Yes, and the great thing about it is, I mean, I guess we could just jump right into it. It is fantastic in a time when comic book movies were not fantastic. Yes. We should just bring it up. But we'll take you right on back, everybody. The year is 1998. The last comic book movies that had come out were Batman, Robin, Spawn, and Steel, all in 1997. So that's what we were living with at this time, people.
Nothing but the heavy hitters, man.
Exactly. So only a year after the genre had been almost put into a grave, this little horror action movie comes out and totally sets the stage for X-Men and Spider-Man, and the whole genre takes off again. It's a pretty impressive feat that this little action movie pulled off. So I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. The whole, I know we'll get more on the production side of it, but it is fascinating that this is a Marvel film made by New Line Cinema, who is Warner Brothers, in 1998, just after they dropped Batman and Robin, and this was like their follow-up. We were like, Blade, let's go. So, and it's impressive what they're able to do for the time, especially. Even now, it's fucking impressive.
This is New Line Cinema, post Freddy Krueger, pre Lord of the Rings. Yep. So that's where they were in. And this is kind of, did New Line Cinema do The Mask as well? I'm blanking on that. They did The Mask as well, right?
I'm fairly certain they did. I don't know for sure, but I think they did. So they were adapting like a couple of like offbeat comic book properties, and I mean, Blade is certainly something that fits that quota, because this is a property that was not super popular. Blade as a character is like someone who in the comics up to this point is like kind of a 1970s gag almost, who then gets totally retooled in the 90s in the comics, and then in the film, and then in animation as well, and then in the film they just went like completely stylistic overhaul on the character, and it's people say like, oh, it's kind of riffing on Matrix a little bit. I'm like, not really, but there's
It's just
leather.
the 90s aesthetic.
It's just the 90s aesthetic, man. It's leather, it's bright, it's loud, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it is a great, great little movie. And I'm saying little movie in a complimentary way.
Yes.
This does not try and have a giant world-ending battle with a blue light shooting up in the sky at the end. They made an action freaking movie with this. Mm-hmm. So just to get back to what Martin was talking about for just a moment, the character was introduced in the Tomb of Dracula comics back in the 70s. And when he first started off, he did not look like Blade does now at all. He had like green pants and a leather jacket and a bandolier with like wooden stakes on it. And he was very 70s. Exactly. Everyone knows that famous cover, that famous Tomb of Dracula cover. And it's very much like the Punisher, another one of these Marvel Knights-esque characters where he didn't even premiere in a original title. He was just invented as like a one-off villain for a bigger character, either Spider-Man or Dracula. But it's such a cool concept that they're like, well, we have to do something with this. We can't just let it go. And he was even just a regular dude in the comics until they were like, he should actually have something to do with vampires. So they had him get bit by Morbius real quick, and then he sort of turned into the Daywalker.
He was in the 70s. So he was just the crazy guy screaming about vampires in New York and staking random people.
Which is cool into itself, yeah. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, he got turned originally by fucking Morbius, so his weird, it's like sucky hands, his weird fucking sucker hands. He like just dapped him up and fucking gave him the vampire AIDS. Like, what's going on?
Morbius bit people. He didn't have the sucker hands. Damn it, that was the cartoon.
Okay.
Oh man,
he's not drinking blood. He's taking their life force because this
plasma.
Is the kid. Yeah, exactly.
He's getting a hand job, just turning.
Don't shoot me with those laser guns that you clearly just put in here because Columbine was a year ago. Like,
dude, Morbius giving
even as a kid, I was
insane to me.
Even as a kid, I was watching that Spider-Man cartoon, and every time the cops would pull out like laser guns, I'm like, what in the hell is this? Like, why does the Batman animated series get to have real guns? Right. Take this shit.
Oh God.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's 1998. Columbine has just happened, and now we're making a Blade movie, and
time and place, Marvel. Right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to set the stage. Okay, it was Marilyn Manson was in the air. This is what was going on at the time.
Smells like Teen Spirit.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my God.
But yeah, Marvel Comics had not had a theatrical success whatsoever. At all. The most successful Marvel adaptation that had happened up to this point was the 60s Spider-Man cartoon and the 70s Hulk TV show. That was it. Everything else had been like a moderate, tiny, mild success to complete failure. And I only say tiny, mild success because at least Amazing Spider-Man got like a full season, the live action show. But the only movies leading up to this that they had in adapted were Howard the Duck, The Punisher, and Captain America. We can't even count the Fantastic Four movie because that wasn't even available to anybody yet. It hadn't been bootlegged yet.
Yep.
So those are the three movies we had. And when the best movie of your adaptation line is the 90s Captain America, that's a pretty easy bar to clear. But man, it doesn't just clear the bar, it sets it really high to a point that almost it hasn't even really been touched again, specifically for this character.
God, let me just go off real quick. This movie fucks so hard. I love this movie. Just doing this rewatch again, I was just like, God damn it, they were just cooking. 1998, bro. They came out the gates fucking swinging. This movie rocks in every single way. Like, and I say that as the biggest cynic on this fucking show. You know what I mean? Like, it takes a lot for me to, genuinely enjoy film, not just be like, oh, that was like stupid and fun, I enjoyed it, I didn't hate it, but like to genuinely be like, no, this fucking rocks. That this movie just clears everything, man. And like Andy said, it sets in a peak and an expectation that these movies or the subgenre truly rarely hits, in my opinion. Rarely reaches the heights of it, both in terms of genuine enjoyment and also, and Andy kind of alluded to this earlier, the scale of it. Most of these superhero movies do not do something small scale, relatively speaking, as like Blade, and do it as successfully, if at all. So the fact that this movie achieves what it did with the scope that it set out to, and just absolutely nails it, because it even does and we'll get into the plot like briefly later on, but it even does a quote unquote end of the world kind of, stakes at the very, very end, no pun intended, but it just completely like, I just love it. Just kind of pulls a rug under that and just actually like, nah, it still just ends up being just two dudes fighting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Fuck all that like end of the world apocalyptic shit. Like that's just like window dressing at the end of the day, just two motherfuckers fighting with katanas, and then it just ends, and I love it.
It's like having this huge like world-ending threat about to happen, and then it ends with like just two old dudes fist fighting on top of a giant machine like Metal Gear Solid 4. Let's fucking go! I'm down with like just two dudes sword fighting at the very end, and that's the big fight. That's cool with that.
Especially when one of them is Wesley Snipes, who could actually kill somebody with a samurai sword if he wanted to. Like,
Yes.
This was back in the day when they cast people who could actually do these stunts on their own, and it made it 10 times more badass. I mean, I'm not going to say it's on the same level, because it's not, but it is like when they have Jackie Chan in like the police story movies and stuff, and you're like, oh,
Yes.
like this guy could actually kick these people's asses if he wanted to. Same with Wesley Snipes. You're like, this ain't an actor that's been eating chicken and rice for the last 6 months just to look like he could kick somebody's ass. This is like Wesley Snipes has been training his whole life to just roundhouse kick somebody in the face, and he put on a black trench coat and he got the excuse to do it. It is an incredible casting decision.
Oh, absolutely.
It's too perfect. It's absolutely too perfect. And I would say this, this is a whole other kind of separate discussion to talk about when it comes to like Black Panther and like, but just speaking personally, just speaking as myself as an individual and as a black man, this is my like black superhero. Fuck all that Black Panther shit. This is, to me, it was inspiring as a kid. Seeing Wesley Snipes be like this badass in such a good like movie, and him doing all this crazy shit, like to me, this is like my ideal kind of black character in a superhero movie. Not all the kind of other shit that happens with Black Panther, which I'm not going to get into here, but for me at least, like this was as a like a young black kid watching this shit, I was like, oh, like not only do I feel seen, but I'm like, damn, like this guy is cool in his own unique way that only someone with the charisma and like the skill of Wesley Snipes' presence on screen can bring. And that's just one of the many reasons why this movie just fucking rules. This shit is Kino. This is one of the best cape shit movies out there. I love it. Can't gushing about it enough.
Yeah, it's pretty perfect.
It is absolutely pretty fucking perfect. I would say it is one of my favorite films of the entire subgenre. When rewatching it, I literally just rewatched it today. I was like, man, this probably is my favorite superhero film outside of like Batman Returns, maybe from the pre like 2000s era, like that 20th century comic book movie landscape where it's like, I know Andy loves Superman the movie. There's Tim Burton's Batman, and then like Blade, and those are like the pillars of what make up that the 20th century era for superhero movies for me personally. And yeah, Blade just knocks it out of the park. And this is a movie where it's like, I had not seen this until I want to say maybe I was like really early teens, like maybe 12 or 13. But I had seen Blade 2 when I was like 6 because my parents were just like, yeah, throw on Blade 2, whatever. My dad would just watch whatever he wanted to watch and I'd be included there. And the funny story is I really wanted to see the first Blade because I had seen Blade 2 and loved it. So I went to the local Blockbuster at the time. Checked it out, got it, brought Blade home with me, opened it, put the VHS tape in the player, and it was Blade Runner, and I'm like 7.
Oh no.
They put the wrong movie in there. I'm just like, well, this isn't Blade. I'm like, where's Wesley Snipes?
Where's Wesley Snipes?
Did you get into the movie before you realized Blade?
I mean, honestly, it was probably like 25 minutes into it where I realized this isn't Blade, actually, because it's like, you get the dark, muggy, like, rain in the streets and, like, just, like, the people walking in trench coats. I'm like, okay, maybe this is Blade. And it keeps going, like, why are there flying cars?
Y'all got flying cars, but you ain't got a brother? What's going on here?
But then I saw this. I got the VHS tape for it for like 99 cents at a library sale when I was 12. I popped that in. Oh my god, I had such a great fucking time. This is such a fun movie. Wesley Snipes, pitch perfect casting as Blade. And like Andy said, this is a guy who I absolutely believe can beat the fucking shit out of anybody he's fighting in this movie, because he can. Wesley Snipes is a good fucking fighter and actor. So yeah, he's phenomenal in it. We'll talk about the rest of the cast for sure, because there's a lot of great fucking casting decisions in this movie. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
If you have not watched Blade in a long time or in a while, you need to rewatch it again, because it's better than you remember it. I guarantee it.
It is a wonderful little gem of this era. And again, I am saying little in a very complimentary fashion, because this is the type of movie that a kid would rent not knowing what it is and have their mind blown. This isn't something, I mean, everybody knows Blade is obviously a very popular movie, but it's not one of those things where every single frame of it has entered like the cultural zeitgeist. It's not like, you know, and people aren't referencing frames from, you know, shots from Blade or all kind of that stuff. And I'm not saying this in a derogatory way at all. It is a great movie, and it also hasn't been like homaged to death within subsequent superhero culture. So you can go back to this and be like, oh shit, like this is a really good 90s action movie. This is great. Yep. It's not, you know, it's not like trying to go back and watch Die Hard and every single action movie post Die Hard is copying Die Hard.
Yes. Well,
you know,
I think a big part of that is because Blade as a film, and I would argue the same for the second film too, is it's not a superhero film first. It is not a comic book film first. It adapts being a good action film and a good horror film first and foremost. It never feels like a superhero film. And that's important, because I think the distinction that we've established before, and that I think people sometimes struggle with, is like, there are movies that are superhero based, that are based on superhero comics, that are still movies because they are based on other genres, or they're applying those characters in that world to that genre. And then there are just superhero movies where it is just good guy fighting the bad guy. It feels like a comic book, and that's it. And there's nothing really below the surface outside of punch, 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 punch. There's the end. And that's what people mean. Like when we were talking about the difference between a superhero film and like a film based on a superhero, there's a fine line.
Yes.
You know, and some people prefer the other, whatever, they got their fill in the last decade. There's other movies in the genre that you need to appreciate and understand where they're coming from. And Blade is a great example of that, because this movie is, first and foremost, it is a great action film. It works on every single level. There's never a dull period in the film. When it slows down, it's for a few minutes just to get the character work in that you need to make you care about what's going on. And then it's just like, bam, right back to, you know, Blake getting shot by the police. And it's beating the shit out of Donald Logue. So it never really slows down to that degree where you're bored. And the second one is the same way too. It's a great action
completely
film.
agree. Completely agree. And I think you nailed a perfect point as to why this film, I think, works so well and why it is as good as it is. Because in a similar vein to, let's say, something like Logan, where they are trying to, the filmmakers are trying to make a different genre film first and foremost and succeed on that front, i.e. Logan being a Western and Blade, in this case, being an action movie slash a horror movie. And they succeed on that front first, on the main genre, and then they add in the superhero elements, and they leverage the comic book elements in the adaptation to just amplify those other aspects of the first genre. And that mixture right there, that kind of alchemy that they bring, is how you make these successful movies, like the actual films that happen to be based on superhero properties, versus, you know, the other that Marty had mentioned, which is like actual like superhero movies. And I definitely, if you couldn't tell, prefer the former over the latter. You can like what you like, but I know what I like, and it is real films. And this is a real ass film. It's a kick-ass action movie. It's a sick horror film, and it all comes together to make one of the best of this cape shit genre has to offer. So yeah,
well, it's worth noting that we are not saying that superhero movies are lesser or are inherently lesser than the ones that are just adapting the superhero, because Donner's Superman, Raimi's Spider-Man, you know, the first Iron Man, those are all Kino movies that are superhero films through and through. They follow the superhero structure, and they're absolutely as good. I mean, the argument can be made that they're even better than Blade. I mean, it's a dumb argument, because they're all platinum. Right. So there's no point in arguing. But yeah, they're all platinum. But it's, you know, Blade and Superman the movie. One is not right and one is not wrong. It's just two different ways of doing it. The obvious example to go to is the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, just because of all the discourse that caused. But that's not a supervillain movie.
Right.
That is a movie based on a supervillain. And I think we've talked about this countless times off air. If someone were to pitch you a Joker movie, the immediate thing your mind would go to would be like, oh, like I guess the plot would be he's in a gang war with Two-Face or something, and it's told from his, blah, blah, blah. That's what you would think. But then Joker comes along and it's like, we're just going to do Taxi Driver, but with the Joker, which you can like or not like. And it's the same thing with Blade, where it's not like Blade is not I'm learning responsibility and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. It's like, no, we're just starting and he's going to fuck up an entire club full of vampires.
And we'll touch on this at the end of the show. But I mean, if you really want that version of Blade, don't worry. You're probably going to get it in like 2 years if the movie happens. So.
Ooh.
Yes, exactly.
Oof.
If being the operative word.
Yes.
If being the remember, I'll talk about it at the end.
Okay.
We'll save We'll save all the pessimism for the end. We're nothing but enthusiasm for this awesome movie. Yeah. We should get into like how it began though, because the movie is written by David S. Goyer, who has
Daddy Goys.
People are up and down on him, but he is nonetheless a huge player in the development of the early to mid 2000s superhero movie, arguably as big of an influence as I would say
Christopher Nolan. Without him, we would not have Batman Begins. David Goyer was a vital part in getting that film off the ground. He was a vital part in getting the superhero genre where it is. He wrote Blade, he wrote Blade 2, and through the struggles, he directed Blade Trinity, but you can't fully blame him for that one. So
no, exactly. And this dude's name was attached to everything.
Yes.
Back in the day, like he was writing a Flash movie, he was writing Godzilla at one point. He's been attached to every single little thing. He did Man of Steel and that helped with the Dark Knight trilogy and Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance. We all remember that one.
Oh yeah.
This, I honestly, on the whole, am pretty okay with David Goyer. He's written some really good things, and I think what is good about him, at least from when you've heard his like bigger successes, is that he's very good at like synthesizing what an adaptation of this character should be as far as the plot of it go. He's very much like, okay, we're making a Blade movie. What are the essential elements that need to be in a Blade movie? Then he submits the script and you get a filmmaker that sort of polishes it and turns it into Kino. He's the important like structural backbone that then these filmmakers can build off of. Would you guys agree?
Completely.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think, not to cause any war or anything if people are comment on this, but it's interesting you mentioned like he is important to getting the structure and backbone for these kind of films, because sometimes it can work if you keep him on as a story guy. Like with the Dark Knight movies, he wrote the first Batman, he wrote Batman Begins, and then he was on as the story guy for Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. He wrote the script for Man of Steel, and they had him, I think, on like a story credit for Batman v Superman, but how much of that was him is negligible at best. And that movie has a lot of structure issues. You needed a guy like him to get the structure down, I think. And this is a case where Blade is a fucking finely tuned, finely structured movie. You live in Blade's world. It's a world that already exists. It's already here. You are not doing the stupid, the vampires are rising up, or what are these things that are attacking the city? It's like, no, they're already here. They're part of this world. Blade already has his world existing, and a guy handling a Blade adaptation should know to do it that way, and he did it so fucking well.
Well, it's very similar to the opening of X-Men 2000, where you get 5 minutes of the Auschwitz scene for Magneto, and then it's just the X-Men exist. And it's the same way with like Blade. It's like literally 30 seconds of his mom being rushed into the hospital, and then it's like, and it's just Blade. Like there's no bullshit. Like, first 45 minutes of him like training. It can work, like it can work for certain movies.
It can. Awesome. This is actually just a little interesting side note when it comes to the comic books, and this is something we talked about with Ghost Rider too, is that something that Ghost Rider did really well was streamlining Ghost Rider's origin story and cutting out the fat that's just like it's not needed. Blade has a lot of origin fat that is not needed, like him being trained in the UK by like some badass vampire assassin dude already, and like there's the Dark Stalkers team or whatever they're fucking called, Night Stalkers or whatever. And you're just like,
Yeah.
dude, I don't give a shit. I just want to see this guy fight vampires
Who
with a samurai
cares?
sword.
Yeah, exactly. You put it perfectly. They cut off a lot of the fat of this character. Not just in Wesley Snipes' diet, because that dude is shredded, but also in the story structure. It's finely tuned. It's perfect. And I think the best way that we can illustrate that is the opening rave scene. I mean,
Yes.
is there any better way to introduce this character?
Fantastic.
I would argue this is one of the best openings in any of the films in this subgenre. One of the best opening. I do this a lot on the show. If people haven't noticed already, like when it comes to this specific subgenre, a lot of the times I feel like, especially when they get a little bit long in the tooth, that it's not warranted. Like there's just not enough going on in the plot or the characters where I feel like it would warrant a super long runtime. So I'm always appreciative of things that just get to it, just get right to it. And good God Almighty, does this film get right to it? This is an incredible opening with just setting the tone. Not only, as Andy alluded to, the 30-second snippet we get, which I think is really effective for setting the tone of Blade's mother being rushed into the hospital. She's bleeding out of her neck. Doctors are confused. It's very hectic, and there's a whole lot going on. It's very stress inducing. And then we see Blade, this like basically infant just freshly ripped out of his mother. And then we cut right onto the opening of him like assaulting all the vampires in the nightclub. And I think it's, to go to the point of why this opening works so well, is you have the tone set already with Blade literally being born into this world, bloodied, and it's all a mess, and it's just into the violence already of having to be, cesarean sectioned out of his mother who's dying. Then we cut to a nice establishing shot of like which I'll get into later on, but just the 90s aesthetic is just peak here. Like the monochromatic, washed out tone of like the 90s itself in this era, and then just kind of like, again, very muted color palette of this film. And we have this couple being, this guy going with this girl, and they're driving, and it's all frisky and flirty. And then they go to this nightclub, and she's luring him in, and they're passing by what I think it's a butchery that they're inside of, right? And they're going through the bag, and the guy's like, man, the fuck is going on? I don't know, but she's hot, and this is cool, okay?
Right.
And then that just perfectly sets us up to him entering a club full of fucking vampires.
I love that we follow this fucking chud who is completely out of his element, just like a poser guy basically being dragged into this underground nightclub. Yes. And the just the little additional touches of like, she's fucking around with him in the car as they get there, she grabs his crotch and everything, and he's just, being led by the dick basically into this, nightclub that is in the back of like a meat packing district. And as they get close to the entrance, you see it for like a split second because he goes like, what's that? And it's them carting dead human bodies right by, but it happens so quickly. And you're just like, what the fuck? Did I just see that? And he keeps going. And he's just like, and he's just going along because, he wants to fuck. And then he gets dragged into the nightclub. She speaks a different language entirely that he can't even figure out. They go in there, and immediately he just gets shoved around by every single fucking person in there. It's the great little setup of like, oh yeah, this is believable. This could totally happen to anybody. And that's what makes this world feel real, is because people have been in that situation.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. I've been invited to concerts where I'm like, I am completely out of my element, and then I'm uncomfortable.
It's all fun and games, getting led by the dick somewhere, and next thing you know, motherfuckers start raining blood on you.
Right. Yeah, it's a little different then. So it's a great fucking opening sequence, and I do want to take a quick aside because this is something I just pieced together in my head. I love that in the 3 origin films for comic book movies that David Goyer has worked on, whether it's Blade, Batman, or Superman, birth is the first scene that basically happens. In Blade, it is the birth of Blade. Batman, it is Bruce falling down the well and being attacked by the bats. Superman, birth. Yeah. I love that. That's such a great fucking good job, David Goyer. I love your through line of creativity here.
I think the setting of this is perfect for the type of movie you're going to get as well, because it would be so easy to write this in like Grand Central Station or something. And you could easily see like the worst version of this, where it's like, maybe it's following a character that's not Blade going through Grand Central Station, and there's a bunch of people, and then maybe you see Blade in the background, and then the action starts and he jumps out and he's, cutting people up. But that would be like a lame ass forgettable action sequence. But this is like, no, this is taking place in a backdoor club, like a secret place in a meatpacking plant. It looks low budget, but in a good way. It like in a really, really good way. In the way that like in the way we were just talking off air about like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in the same way that Texas Chainsaw Massacre looks cheap as hell, but in a way of like, oh, we're going somewhere that like most movies aren't going to take us. Same thing with Blade for this type of movie. You're like, oh, so there's not going to be a giant fight to start off the movie as far as like, you know, he's hopping off of walls and all that stuff.
With like a John Williams-esque musical riff or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
This entire thing's scored with like techno rave music, this opening. And it's awesome.
Damn right it is.
We're not going to go through every scene in this movie like we do in other movies. But this opening scene does warrant a little bit of conversation because...
Yeah, we have to, if we're going to talk about anything, we have to talk about this opening scene.
Yes. It's an important scene, and I think it's the scene that most has seen a resurgence in pop culture now. If someone posts a scene from Blade, it is this fucking scene.
Yep. Yeah, and I think just exploring like why it works so well. Andy kind of alluded to this with the techno music. I think that's a good sign of why, or at least one of the many reasons why it works so well, is you're immediately grounded into this world, right? Like this guy, like again, we're not having some whatever pop music was popular at the time playing in the background to be all cheeky and shit like that. It's like, no, we're in a underground rave and we're playing rave music, and it fits with it, and it also adds to the franticness of the scene as we're following the perspective of like, you know, the dickhead who's just like walking around getting shoved, literally he's like shoved around like a piece of meat. And then the music just kind of ramps up, and the doom, 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 like the bass keeps getting higher and higher, and then the lights are flashing around. It's almost like he's having a bad trip. And then finally, like when he starts noticing the blood literally raining down on him from the sprinkler system, and it's a beautiful fucking scene when just everything is crimson, everybody's just covered in fucking blood. It's very orgiastic, and I use that word very deliberately because this film has what I think every vampire film should have, a lot of like sex and violence just baked into the core of it. And so you have this extremely like orgiastic scene when the blood starts raining down because all the vampires start like undulating in like jovial like ecstasy and everything like that, and they're all like
fucking
you get these
out and screaming, and their eyes are all going blue and shit. It's great.
That DJ has the flashlights on either side of his head, and he's like, like as it's going. I love right before that happens. The guy's walking around and the girl's like, oh, you know, they brush him off. He's like, oh, I guess she just wants to hang out with her friend or whatever. But he gets bumped into by Stephen Dorff, the main villain of the movie, and he just gives him this look of like, I am gonna fuck you up. Like it's like, and he walks by so fast. Like it's not like, if you were watching it for the first time, you wouldn't quite catch it.
Right. It's something you wouldn't pick up on until you rewatch the movie again. Because if you're watching it for the first time and you don't know who fucking Stephen Dorff is, because I mean, unless you watch True Detective, it's 1998. You're not going to know who Stephen Dorff is. You're not going to notice that. But seeing that on a rewatch, it's so fucking cool. And I love that as a nice touch with, you know, the extras they have in the scene and everything. Is like everyone is looking at him like he's a piece of meat and we're going to fuck him up, basically. So they're looking like kind of like revolted, like, oh, get out of here, man. It's like if, I don't know, it's like if someone like, I don't know, let a fucking like chicken loose inside of a party or whatever. You're just like, we'll fucking cook it up. Get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, and then he looks over and Donal Logue is making out with one woman while getting domed up by another, and that is like, it's so like indulgent, but in the right way. Because it would be one thing, like it would be too much if they had like cages of strippers with like topless women and everything. Like that would be too much. Because like, it feels so real. Like everybody's been to that party or that club where you look over, you're like, wait a minute. That person's dick is out, like, you know, and it's like, you know, it's one of those things where you're like, wait, what are they doing in that corner in that bathroom? Like, it feels so real.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
I mean, couldn't agree more. Like,
I was just gonna say, we got to mention homeboy Donal Logue, fucking heroic efforts MVP right here, coming back from Ghost Rider, getting domed up.
As he should. He deserves it.
That's right.
No, I think Andy's completely right too. Like it again, going back to grounding the audience in this movie, in this world. It just like Andy said, it is not overindulgent. It's very indulgent, but it's not overly indulgent, and it doesn't stand out. Had it been more gauche, had it been more just kind of, I think, cheap in going for, yeah, let's just have like, women just like hanging from the ceiling with their tits out and everything like that. That'd have been too much. You'd been like, okay, you're trying way too hard. But instead we're like, no, it's especially in this underground rave area, like, yeah, there's a good chance someone's getting like domed up, and it just adds to like the griminess of it, because it's like, it's the flashing lights in the dark and everything like that. Like, it's very, very fitting for the scenery. And again, just after the blood starts falling and all of them start like literally like gnawing and gnashing their teeth at him. And I love the kind of like camera going in and out on the different background extras, and the like lion noises, like the big cat noises they'll make when they're like growling at him, like, we're gonna fucking eat you alive.
Going on with one of them.
What's wrong, baby?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then he crawls right up
so hard.
Boots. Like, it's the perfect character introduction. Just the boots right there. He looks up.
Yep.
There's fucking Blade standing there looking as badass as anyone ever has. And then all those vampires that were terrifying like 20 seconds ago are all backing away, and you hear them like, it's the Seawalker. Like, they're terrified. It's fucking awesome.
Just okay, like
that is how you introduce a character.
Talk about a great first shot of your fucking comic book movie character is him standing there with his fucking heavy artillery suit on, with his fucking, his big old fucking jacket on, with the sword out. His boots are covered in blood from the floor. There's vampires all around him. There's your establishing shot of your character. It's so fucking great. And yeah, the lead up with the boots, smacking against the blood water and everything coming out. Fucking great stuff.
Yep.
And then them cowering in fear when he comes in immediately tells you what the relationship is with the villains and the hero of this film.
And then the action scene starts, and the fucking rave music, which is great, starts up again, and he's just kicking ass. Like, he's got stakes, and he's staking people to the ceiling, and he kicks a dude's head into the lamp, and like it electrocutes him. Like,
I'm gonna rip your fucking head off. Fucking punches her with his fucking shotgun and blasts her head off.
Oh my god, yeah. And then he's like throwing the shotgun, it's like, and knocking people over. And then there's security guards, and then just some of like the blood-covered vampires all picked up Uzis and are just shooting at him. It's so awesome.
Fucking Steven Dorff's little girlfriend character in this movie picks up an Uzi in her fucking underwear and bra and just shooting while she runs away.
Yeah. I love the shot of all the vampires running out of the club as the other guys are trying to get in with their guns. It's so great.
God, it's so. The action scenes in this film are absolutely incredible. Chief among them being this intro sequence, just Wesley Snipes going around whooping ass. You know what I mean? Like the establishing shot of him. No one's ever looked more badass than he has in that. When you finally like see him in the intro, but my God, that brother is just whooping ass left and right in this film, doing karate kicks and just breaking motherfuckers' noses, shooting them, and I love the integration of both like the martial arts and also his like vampire hunting gear. In a lesser movie, this would look like Jonah Hex. Like, this would be silly, but because it's Wesley Snipes, because he has that charisma, and like Andy said in the beginning, because he like genuinely looks like he could do this in real life, because he is. My man is really out here doing these stunts and whooping ass. It just kind of all comes together to be this perfect dance of him doing all this martial arts and all these flips and shit like that, and then staking motherfuckers with like silver stakes and shooting them with his shotgun, or like the harpoon stakes on the shotgun. It all fucks so hard, and I absolutely adore the kind of climax of the scene when he is confronting Quinn, Donald Logue's character, and Donald Logue's just like talking all this mad shit to him, and then he like shoots the harpoon stakes and like just gets him pinned to the wall, just like puts one on each shoulder, has him stuck to the fucking wall, and then he's like, Quinn, I'll try cutting you up. Now I'm gonna try fire, and then lights his ass up, and he's just sitting there, and it just, again, going to the horror elements of like why it works so well for this film. If you step back for a second, it's kind of generally horrifying, especially from the perspective of the dickhead that's like still there, just cowering on the floor, covered in blood, not knowing what the fuck is going on. And here you have this guy who's just been pinned to the wall with these metal stakes and then lit on fire, and just his corpse is just screaming and burning alive.
I'm getting a little tired of chopping wood. Thought I might try fire for a change. Give my regards to Frost.
It fucks so hard. This opening scene
and you know
rules.
Blade is all business because as soon as the dickhead's like on the ground cowering, he's all pretty much, you can tell Blade's gonna kill him, but then he checks his neck, he's like, okay, you're fine. He just fucking leaves him alone, basically, to watch the fucking burning corpse.
I was gonna bring that up. I'm like, that's very much like a Clint Eastwood Man with No Name thing, where it's like no time for bullshit, no nothing. Yep. He checks the neck and okay, you're fine, you go. Yep. You're done. Yep. And then the cops come in, which mild trivia point. Stan Lee had a cameo as one of the police officers that was coming in. I'm so disappointed they cut it out because I wish the era of Marvel and film could have officially begun the movie with a Stan Lee. Because not only would it be a Stan Lee cameo, but it would be a Stan Lee cameo at the beginning, at the coolest opening you could possibly do.
And it should have been unlike any other Stan Lee cameo would ever be afterwards, and have him look at the burning corpse and just go, holy fuck, and then you cut.
Oh shit. On that note, that's actually something I want to touch on just to kind of wrap up our discussion of the opening and how good it is. This film, we talked a lot about setting the tone. What I appreciate so much about this film and what kind of puts it separate from a lot of the other superhero films in particular, and how I knew, like, upon this rewatch and remembering all this, how I knew I was going to get locked in and be like, this is fucking Kino, is the fact that this film opens with vulgarity. Like, it opens with the dickhead guy just going like fuck. Like, half of his lines are literally just fuck, right? And then of course we can't go talk about the scene without mentioning the fact that, like, it opens up with swearing, violence, and sex. You know what I mean? It just comes out the fucking gate being like, this is an R-rated movie because this is an action movie first and foremost. And to me, that especially just given how sanitized I think these films become, and that's not always a bad thing, right? Like, obviously tone is important for every individual film, but for me specifically, the way that this film opens with that kind of specific vulgarity, I loved it because you knew you were in for, okay, this is its own thing. It is not tethered to anything else. This is not being infantilized like a lot of other movies in this property happen to be, where it's like, we need to appeal to the most common denominator, make this as sanitized, as family friendly as possible. This comes out like, no, we're an R-rated action film, and you're gonna roll with it.
Yep. This is the R-rated action film that the parents would bring their kids into, and then after the first 5 minutes, take the kids out of.
Yeah. Or if they were cool, let them watch the whole thing.
Or if they were like, my parents,
if they want the kids to experience, if they want to experience cinema and pass that on to their real kids, then
no, absolutely,
Well, yes,
if you had cool parents like I did, then
You were 100% right in wrapping up the discussion of the opening scene. It's awesome, and it ends on the fucking coolest shot of all time, which is Blade walking out into that alleyway and that crane up shot with all the papers and trash just being blown down the alleyway, and it just cranes up, and you just see him walking in that awesome trench coat. It's perfect. And then, like we said, we're not going to discuss like the entire plot of this movie, but it then cuts to a hospital scene where it introduces the doctor character, and she's working on Donald Logue. Fun trivia fact: when Donald Logue was filming this movie, he was in the full burn makeup. He broke his jaw while they were filming one of the action scenes, so they had to take him to a real hospital in the full burn makeup. When they took him into the hospital, everyone there freaked the fuck out because they thought it was a real human being who had been burned that bad. And they started prepping like every possible emergency life-saving thing they would need. And they're like, no, it's real. He's fine. He just broke his jaw. Which I think that's lovely. I love any time a movie can scare the shit out of people in real life.
I love that. Well, because the makeup work in that scene is fantastic. The work on Donald Logue's body, incredible. And I just got to say, man, the fucking bit where he falls out of the damn hospital window, smashes into that ambulance, freaks out the woman, and you just see like his eyes have like no pupils or anything. He's just like screaming, like, and then he bursts out the fucking ambulance, running away with his chopped off arm. That's fucking great. Yeah. I lose my shit at that scene every time.
It's that hyper energy, like Monster Energy fueled, like middle school, like nitro brain that like we would love in 7th grade, and we love as men in our mid-20s now. It's still just as good.
Still just as good, man. Yeah, it's that great adrenaline shot, man. I love that stuff. And of course, you get introduced to your female lead, whose name I'm completely blanking on because the movie like almost never mentions her by name. Karen, I think it's Karen.
Yeah.
It's Karen Jensen.
Karen Jensen.
Yeah, Dr. Karen Jensen.
I only remember that because for whatever reason, I think they got the actress that did the voice of Reagan in the Exorcist movie to do like the boyfriend after he's vampified or whatever. Because he goes like, Karen.
Oh yeah. Later on in the film,
fairly certain that's her. But yeah, so Karen Jensen. Go ahead.
I would be super remiss if we talked about this scene and we don't mention one of two most iconic lines in this fucking film. When Blade, as he's returns to finish the job or attempt to finish the job on Donald Logue, and he's like cutting him up, and then he takes a now incapacitated Dr. Karen, and the police show up. And I love that this film has like these GTA ass police who like don't even attempt to really reason with Blade when he has a hostage. They're just like unload the entire fucking clip or try to shoot him up, and we just get this great shot of like the cop fires off a few rounds into Blade's body armor, and then we just get Wesley Snipes, who was a cold-blooded motherfucker this whole movie. He's cool, calm, and collected, but this one shot, he's just like, motherfucker, are you out your damn mind?
Freeze! Motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?
It's incredible. It's one of the best lines in any of these fucking films.
What makes it so great is that, yes, like you said, Wesley Snipes' Blade is cool and collected in like every scene he's in this movie. And every movie, he's the cool, calm, and collected guy. But that fucking moment is just where he's just like, he just fucking snaps. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing? I love that. He loses his goal, and you get like, he doesn't have the sunglasses on. It's just Wesley Snipes' amazing fucking eyes. And he's just like, motherfucker, are you out your damn mind? It's so great. Oh my God. I love it.
I can easily see real Wesley Snipes using that exact line and cadence with like maybe a fan that's a little too like aggressive asking for a signature or something.
Yes.
Yes, the dude runs up on him, just like puts a camera in his face and tries to take a picture, and he just fucking karate chops him and says that.
Exactly. Well, since we got through the second coolest part of this movie, do one of you guys want to take the plot, just because you guys are often more succinct than I am, and we're already 30 minutes into this episode, so we should summarize the plot.
I got it.
All right, let's do that.
Dr. Karen Jensen, during the hospital attack, gets bit by Donald Logue's character, so she's getting all vampified and stuff, and Blade's like, I gotta save her. So he takes her, throws her out the goddamn window, jumps like fucking 50 feet across the street, takes her to his old buddy Whistler, who plays Whistler? I'm blanking on the name right now.
Chris
Christopherson. Fucking OG Chris Christopherson. God love him. He is fantastic as Whistler, by the way. I think we should mention
kills
that.
it.
Kills it. Just as the old mentor guy. That is how you do the old mentor character for Blade. Not some fucking like badass assassin vampire killer in the UK underground or whatever. No, make him some old grungy, watched Easy Rider too many times growing up. Make him that guy. He lived Easy Rider, right? So that's who you get. Chris Christopherson's great. He injects her with some like concoction of garlic, and I guess it's supposed to like stop the vampirism from happening. He goes like 50-50 chance she'll make it or she won't. Great shit. While that's all happening, you get introduced to fucking Steven Dorff's Frost, who is the main vampire guy. And it's like, it's an interesting thing where it's like, you've got like the traditional idea of the vampire. These vampires are the modern vampire for the time, which are like, Steven Dorff's Frost is like, listen to music on his fucking Walkman or whatever, just chilling out, having sex parties, orgies all the time at his place, and he's butting heads with the old vampire crew, played by, oh my God, who is the amazing German man?
I got it right here.
Oh my God.
It's Udo Kier.
Udo Kier, who has played Dracula before in his filmography. Fantastic actor. He has popped up in so many Cape Shit adaptations, by the way. He's got such an iconic voice. I love seeing him pop up in things. He's like kind of like the head of the old school like vampire team. They fucking hate Frost because they're just like, you don't represent who we are. You're too vulgar. You're too out there. You're gonna, the point is we're supposed to live in harmony with the humans and just feed on occasion.
Yeah, I do want to just, I'll let you continue because you're flying through this and I love it. I want to make a clear point though. So the main reason that they're butting heads is because you have, and I think the film is very clever for this, you have Udo Kier playing the head of the old pure-blooded. That's a very important point. Pure-blooded vampires that were born vampires. And then you have Deacon Frost, and he's a turned vampire.
Yes.
So you have the clash of the old guard and the new guard, and the old guard is these, once were aristocrats, now they're the high financiers and the people in like the highest, parts of political power within modern society, working from the shadows though, and they want to keep it that way because they're afraid of like revealing themselves. Whereas Frost comes in and he's this new generation. He's rambunctious, he's rebellious, and he's like, fuck that, we're the gods, we should be the ones ruling these people. These people are cattle to us, you guys are living in the past. And that is the central conflict that becomes kind of the driving force for his character. Just want to make that like clear for the audience.
Yes, and Deacon Frost is essentially trying to access the powers of La Magra, which is essentially like their big blood god to bring about the rule of the vampires. Essentially, great comic booky concept, by the way. I love that shit. And that's interesting. I love that you bring that up because that is actually something that is a through line through all of these movies. Is the old guard and the new guard and the kind of combat that happens between them. That's the case in Blade 2 as well. Blade 3 is kind of the amalgamation of the old guard and the new guard working together to stop Blade. So I just noticed, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting through line through all these movies. But yeah. So you got Deacon Frost doing all his stuff, trying to get everything going. Donald Logue is just getting around, getting domed everywhere he can go.
Getting cut up too.
Getting cut up to fucking hell and back. Blade's on the case now with Karen Jensen helping out. He's like introducing her. He's like, this is the real world. This is the world that it actually happens. You're blind to all of this going on. The vampire world that's right there. You get introduced to the idea of the familiars, which are, the people that are human that are following the vampires, doing their bidding, who are, just want to be like the favorite pet and not get killed and maimed, essentially. You get introduced to that concept. Blade takes Karen off to the fucking weird Japanese schoolgirl dance club, which fucking keenly shot, beautifully shot with like the fucking Japanese guys smoking their cigars and everything, and the schoolgirls dancing on stage, which the music is kind of terrible, but hey, it's great. It sets the scene.
And it's also set. I love that that weird like J-pop that they have going on is like a beat for beat matching with like the tone of the scene. Like it just works so fucking well.
Yes. Yeah, you've got the weird the J-pop going on, but then it's cutting with the undercurrent of the actual score, like keeping the creepy tempo going as they're going through, because they're walking through a vampire den essentially. And the reason they're doing this is to meet Pearl, who is probably the most disturbing vampire design I have seen in any movie ever. As basically,
I totally forgot about Pearl, but I fucking love them.
Can't forget Pearl, the 800-pound. Androgynous vampire thing that lives on the sofa basically and is just rotting away, watching everything, surveilling everything for the vampires, holds on to like the secret documents for all the vampires. Such a great concept. That is like where that's a scene you come up with where it's like, hey, we have a little extra money because we cut one other scene, let's go all out on this fucking thing right now. And then you get Pearl, who
I love
gross.
I was just gonna say I love the Pearl thing only to make note of it because it's so fucking weird.
Yes.
Like this literal human like blob of like a vampire. I love that it's so weird. You're absolutely right. Like this is like, fuck it, we're just gonna go ham with the extra money we had left over. But I especially love it because going back to our Jonah Hex episode, you need a weird moment like that. You need a weird guy. Yeah. You know what I mean, to really add to the just sauce in this movie. And mind you, this movie is already dripping in sauce, but like you need a scene like this that's like almost a non sequitur to like really be like, oh, we're fucking, this is cinema, baby. Like we're getting weird. We're just throwing shit out there.
It's the moment where the movie, you have gone beyond the veil. Now you are deep in the weird shit going forward. And you follow that up by having a pro barbecue.
Oh, it's nothing. It's routine research. Actually, it's a video game.
That must hurt.
We've been talking about the sauce of this movie, the barbecue and the sauce that comes with it of this movie for long enough that we really should pause and just say, man, I wish Stephen Norrington made more movies.
Seriously, yeah, he did. He knocked it out of the park with this.
Yeah, friggin' Sean Connery had to drive him insane or whatever happened on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
we will get to that movie eventually.
We will.
But
I think Nick and I have very similar feelings on that movie, so I'm excited to talk about that movie one day.
yes, exactly. But having said that, Stephen Norrington absolutely killed it. Just literally earlier, I was looking up some of his unrealized projects. He was supposed to do Blade 2. He was supposed to do an Akira live-action movie. He was supposed to do Ghost Rider like in 2001, 2002. He's supposed to do the Crow reboot. Why have none of these happened? I mean, the thing is I'm talking...
It's because of Sean Connery, damn it.
He was supposed to do a Shang-Chi movie. I just found that out. I had no idea.
What
like
movie?
back
in
2001. Shang-Chi.
What? Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That would have been better.
I mean, it's the way it definitely would have been. I mean, Blade Trinity is better than Shang-Chi. But the thing is if anybody's not willing to hire him in Hollywood, I'll just say this to them. You try working with late career Sean Connery and tell me how well the movie's going to turn out. It ain't Stephen Norris's fault. You try working with late stage Sean Connery adapting an Alan Moore comic into an action movie for the early 2000s and tell me how well that shit's going to turn out. That's all I'll say.
This is that strange period too. It's like I just as a quick aside, I love like talking about like, you know, his idea for him doing like Blade 2 or Shang-Chi. Love that because I'm like, this is also the period where it's like Quentin Tarantino was going to do a Luke Cage movie. Fucking J.J. Abrams was like tossing around Superman for a while. What's his face was going to do Batman Year One.
Darren Aronofsky
was going to do Batman Year One. James Cameron was going to do Spider-Man.
Catherine Bigelow was going to do the X-Men. It's all these weird ideas and all these unrealized projects. It's sad because they were being done at a time where these filmmakers could have just done whatever they wanted too. So when it's like, Luke Cage would have done it. Yeah, Tarantino would have done a Luke Cage movie. What the hell would that have been? Right. Because it definitely would have been a Tarantino movie first and foremost.
Yeah, it's so interesting just to think about that because that's a period where these filmmakers are going, we want to make these movies. They approached Warner Brothers or what was this company's Fox, Sony at the time, to be like, we want to make this movie. Not the studio approaching them, be like, we want you to make this movie, and if it does well, maybe we'll finance one of your movies, but first you have to do this for us. Yep. It's a totally different time period for what we've been used to for the last like 15 years at this point. It's really interesting to think about that, you know. I mean, this is a period where we're in a period now where it's like Quentin Tarantino approached Paramount to do Star Trek and they're just like, we'll see what you can do. Yeah, we're fine. We're good. Are you out of your fucking mind?
They turned down Tarantino and Noah Hawley for a Star Trek 4 that is never going to get made.
Yes.
That's never going to happen.
It's just a weird period where it's like, you know, the 2000s, late 90s, 2000s had so many interesting projects in development that just didn't happen because the hunger wasn't really there for a lot of these adaptations. Fair enough. But Blade was one of the fucking golden gooses that just happened, that was able to actually happen. And it's such an inspired production. Now, on the plot again, should I continue?
Yes, let's keep going.
So we have Pearl burning alive.
Pearl burning alive. Blade goes and finds this like secret tunnel that leads into what is essentially like the archive room of the Vampire Bible, as he calls it. And this is essentially where they discover, you know, Deacon Frost's ideas of like, you know, summoning La Magra and all that. And that's when Donald Logan, the boys try and ambush Blade, and you got this guy who's just like, look, I got his pig sticker. He's just overacting like fucking crazy. And then his hand explodes because Blade's got, of course, some contraption to protect his sword. And he's just like, I got his fucking pig sticker. Look at this fucking idiot. Donald Logan's laughing at him. And the guy's like fucking like licking his hand almost, like the exploded hand, and like going, it's so weird. I love it.
It's deranged. I love it.
It's deranged. The energy in this is deranged. That's a great way to describe the whole movie, honestly. And then fucking Whistler, Chris Christopherson's Whistler shows up, blows up the wall, and just goes, catch you fuckers at a bad time. So great.
And then just unloads the whole fucking clip on him. It's so good.
It's so fucking cool.
It is an action movie first and foremost, with comic book tools used to tell the story.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Absolutely. Because you are getting elements of the comic book here. You are getting Blade, you're getting Whistler, you're getting Deacon Frost, who turned Blade's mother in the comics and also in this movie. You're getting these elements of the comic in there, but they were like, we're going to make a good action film first and foremost. That is the focus of the film. It's going to be Blade, but it's got to be a good film to begin with. And so, yeah, it's like Karen and Blade escape the fucking vampires in the subway tunnel, but not before Blade continuously beats the fuck out of Donald Logue by slamming his head into a passing subway car and then slicing off his other hand.
Yes!
The coolest shit you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yes.
I adore this. The fact that they just go all in. And again, man, we missed out on some Stephen Norrington Kino.
Seriously, like, it's just
fantastic,
fantastic stuff. So then it's like the film progresses. You get like a scene in like what looks like maybe like Little Tokyo or Chinatown area in Los Angeles almost. Where it's like Deacon Frost is like intimidating Blade and like has like a young girl in his hand, like he's gonna kill her. He's like, why do you care about these people? You know, that kind of thing. And just the moment of like, you know, the Green Goblin Spider-Man moment. Why do you fight for them? They don't care about you. That kind of thing. You don't stop us, Blade. We're here. You know, this is a new era. That kind of thing. And proceeds to have another action sequence where he throws the little girl or whatever.
Fucking yeets her. He it's one of those things where it's like kind of unexpected. Like you're like, okay, yeah, like Blade's gonna like do some like bullet time shit and like, you know, shoo, and then Deacon Frost is moving in vampire speed, and you think he's just gonna like toss the girl to the side, she's gonna fall on the ground. No, motherfucker like grabs this little child and like yeets her like a fucking football through the glass of like a bus stop, and then ends up in the street with like a truck on the way. Like it's a little intentional. Like, oh Jesus.
It's all a distraction for Frost to get away at the moment. And then we have to mention this too, I suppose. By this point, Frost has killed Odo Kier's character, basically by just driving him to a beach, and they're all wearing like leather and like masks to hide themselves from the sunlight, and they're just letting Udo Kier burn in the fucking rising sun, which was a great effect, by the way. I don't know what they did specifically, because it's not like, I don't know what they did. It looks like almost like a mixture of like miniature and like putting his face on the miniature or the robotics that they made. It's strange, like the way he's moving, the way it looks. It's cool, but it's clearly not like him and then CGI flex coming off him. It's like they did some kind of like model where it's like they maybe made like a robotic model and burned it or something. I'm not really sure what they did, but it looks really fucking cool.
You can see a lot of that effect in the ending of 30 Days of Night when Josh Hartnett sort of like floats away, like his face just sort of peels off. And this was the era of like gory vampires, which was really, man, I miss those days. Like I miss the days.
You're telling me.
Well, this was an interesting point too. I guess we can mention genre-wise. The 90s were the period where it's like the established horror icons were kind of just starting to come back again, where it's like you just had Frankenstein, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Wolf had just reestablished the Wolfman. So it was that weird period in the 90s where it's like certain horror subgenres were getting their resurgence. Zombies were kind of like not really there yet, but they were getting like, you know, a little like Night of the Living Dead got a remake. Okay, cool. There were still some Return of the Living Dead sequels coming out. So zombies were still kind of there. And then vampires were getting like their big redesign of like, how do we make a modern vampire movie? This is around the time when Abel Ferrara did The Addiction, which is a fucking fantastic movie. I really recommend people check it out. Abel Ferrara says it's okay for you to pirate his films, so go do it. Go check out The Addiction. It's 80 minutes, black and white, New York City griminess, great vampire movie. Then you got like Blade, which is of course the vampire movie resurgence. 30 Days of Night's a great example for the 2000s, you know. And it's like, I know people harp on Twilight, but I think Twilight's fun. I enjoy those movies, so.
It's fun.
It's that period where it's like, you know, the 90s to the 2000s were that period where they're taking the concept of the vampire and going like, let's try and do it a little differently. Let's do the vampire gore fest. Let's do these, you know, the vampires trying to take over like the world basically, or the love story of the vampire. You know, they're testing these different elements of the genre and taking this iconic setup of the vampire and what it is and trying something new in a period where it's like in the 80s, you know, there were plenty of great vampire movies as well, but it was, I feel like, on the wane at this point.
Yes,
couldn't agree more.
It's worth noting that Interview with a Vampire came out the same time, or relatively the same time. So you had like classical, and Bram Stoker's Dracula as well. Those two had like classical vampires, and then it's like, nope, we are going to ground them in modern day America, sort of how the Lost Boys did in the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, this is a great time too where you get a mixture of both. I mean, I'll just say right now, like, I fucking love Van Helsing's Dracula. That was 2004. So you're getting every flavor of vampire in the next decade, basically.
Well, sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add, just on that note, I couldn't agree more with everything you guys are saying, but I also wanted to add to that point by saying one of the ways that this film in particular adds to, I guess, that resurgence or that redefining of what this archetypical monster represents is, and I alluded to this earlier, grounding them in, especially in Udo Kier's kind of faction of the vampires, of like the true-blooded vampires. These are what once was at one time like the aristocrats. They are now, the financiers. They have changed the facade, but they are still within positions of power, because the film establishes that, like, okay, they're in financing, they're in politics, they pull the strings. They are the deep state, if you will, of, like, society, the Illuminati, or this like concept of like the Illuminati that people have of them pulling the strings in the shadows. But they're hiding in the shadows, and they, and in that darkness, they've become like meek and decrepit, and they've been reduced, despite being in the height of power. They've been reduced in their own physical presence. Like, they are not terrifying, the old order. And I bring this point up, especially in regard to like the plot point of the scene where Udo Kier is being killed by Deacon Frost, because it's really fucking brutal. He rips his fucking fangs out, so he has like a trophy to show the other vampires, and then they just strip him down on a beach and just let him burn, and like his flesh is just being stripped off, almost like it's being flayed by the sunlight. It's really, really badass, and like Marty alluded to, like the effect of it is really interesting, like visually, because I'm curious how they pulled it off. But one extra point I want to bring up, and this will become kind of relevant moving on when we do pick up to the plot again. These old guard vampires, they kind of candy asses. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, especially later on when they like Deacon Frost is like his goons just like bully them. Like, these motherfuckers do not put up a fight. Like, Udo Kier did not put up a fight. Like, this motherfucker is soft as shit. He did not fight at all. Like, he just gets sunned like left and right. And the only thing he does is like pimp slaps Deacon Frost like earlier on in the film. But like, he ain't doing shit. Like, they don't even like threaten him or beat him up. They just grab him. And I guess that adds to the point I made with like they become decrepit and old, in contrast to Deacon Frost and his crews turned vampires who are like vigorous and like dangerous and they're animalistic. These motherfuckers, these old hags, like they just soft as shit. Like they put up no fight.
The old power hasn't had to fight for their place in a very long time, so they get comfortable. They don't worry about it. They shrug Deacon Frost off like he's nothing. They tell him constantly, "You're nothing. You're a half breed. You're not one of us." Basically, they're ignoring the very obvious threat that's going to happen if they don't do anything. And they don't do anything, and they fucking all die.
That's such a great detail. It just establishes this lore of like, how long have they been here where they don't have to do anything? Like, what were they hunting people back in the Old West?
Yes.
Was that when they were establishing their the Industrial Revolution? Was that when they became aristocratic? Like, it just, your mind fills it in.
This is something that, it's like, as much as Blade Trinity, it's a very faulty movie. I have a lot of issues with it. That is one thing I've always also enjoyed about it. And Blade 2 obviously does it too, where it's like they establish more of that background of like how long the society has been going around, how long it's been functioning for. In Blade 2, it's like, you got some Nosferatu looking guy just roaming around in the halls, and he's creating a new breed of vampire. And then Blade Trinity, it's, you have like the farms of people that they've just basically been snatching off the streets for decades and just saving them to feed the blood bag. So it's like, hey, we're not hunting normal people. We're just taking, homeless people off the street. No one are gonna miss anymore. People you're not gonna care about. Then we're just draining them. So that way, hey, we can live in harmony and everything. We're good, right? Okay, cool. You see these societies, that how this society has lived, how it's been established, how it's been existing in the underground of the real world. And it's such a nice, great little detail in all of the films, I think.
Since we were talking about the the state of comic book movies leading up to this, the state of horror movies leading up to this, before we jump back into the plot, I just wanted to take a brief moment to talk about the state of New Line Cinema.
Oh, sure.
At this point, because New Line Cinema, for the longest time, was referred to as the house that Freddy built, because they had nothing when they first started making those Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And those movies catapulted New Line Cinema into being, not just major players, but like with major franchises. Like I have pulled up their filmography here, and there is pretty much like, I mean, they distributed The Evil Dead. That was like their biggest thing before, and that was distribution. And like there's a John Waters movie here, but that's it. And then Nightmare on Elm Street comes along. Suddenly they're doing movies like Critters, and they have they're doing like Hairspray and just bigger movies that are getting actual
around
attention.
This time I think they had just started doing the Austin Powers movies, I believe, too.
Let me go over it because I'm scrolling through. Like I'm seeing here, Leatherface. They were starting to Ninja Turtles. They had just done Ninja Turtles in the 90s.
Huge, yeah.
So I feel like Ninja Turtles was where they really started doing real franchise movies, like blockbuster. Mm-hmm. So there was Ninja Turtles, and then what people don't remember, or what people probably don't know, is that The Mask was originally intended to be an R-rated horror movie like the comics, and they wanted that to be their next Freddy Krueger, which if you've read the comics, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, The Mask is not a comedy.
No, The Mask is a fucked up series, and it's definitely could have been the next Freddy Krueger, because I can easily imagine that sort of, not even necessarily if it was Jim Carrey, but just that Jim Carrey-esque makeup, but just lit in a horror movie way, where he's using his cartoon powers. But The Mask is basically like if Pennywise the Clown tried to be a superhero and then just gave into his murderous desires anyway. He has world-bending cartoon powers. It's like, what's great about The Mask is the movie is like, it's a superhero that has cartoon powers. The comics are a psychopath that have cartoon powers that have real world consequences. What if a human being, what if their skull was hit with a Bugs Bunny mallet? It would blow apart into smithereens. That's what's great about The Mask. We'll talk about that when we actually talk about the Mask movies. But that was, so they were trying to do another Nightmare on Elm Street. They had Ninja Turtles going. They Nightmare on Elm Street was kind of coming back with Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Friday the 13th had died, but I'm looking here. There's In the Mouth of Madness, so they're trying to get more established filmmakers to do horror movies for them. All that good stuff. Just to say that New Line Cinema is just going up and up and up and up, and they're doing Island of Dr. Moreau. They were supposed to do like one of the great science fiction movies of the 1990s, and we will definitely talk about that one in the future too.
But by the way, just for a reference for the audience who may have listened to our Ghostwriter episode, if you were wondering why the fuck did they keep going Johnny Boy, watch In the Mouth of Madness.
Exactly. And we'll probably talk about In the Mouth of Madness as well at some point. Great movie. But the thing that I want to bring up the most from going through all of this history of them is that the year before this, they made Spawn, which is like the worst version of this.
That's interesting.
Fuck, you're so right.
Sort of dark urban superhero that exists in the alleys. That is just like the polar opposite of Blade.
What do you mean by urban, Andy? What do you mean by that?
I mean, it takes place in a city, okay?
Oh, okay.
I'm referring to John.
It happens to have a black guy.
Oh, it was too easy. I had to do it. Anyway.
I know. Oh, man.
Yeah. But jumping, and we will talk about Spawn at some point, just to kind of contrast from this. But to kind of recenter us back in the plot real quick, to wrap it up nice and quick. Deacon Frost, he just murked Udo Kier in a pretty badass way. He established himself as the head of the vampires, told all the old guard to go suck his dick, and he's he's going to concoct his plan because he's been researching the vampire Bible, and he's trying to find a way to resurrect La Magra, and which is like a blood god of like the vampires. So he's concocting and initiating his plan, and Marty, take us from there.
Okay, so he's concocting and initiating his plan. Udo Kier is dead. The plan is to sacrifice all the rest of the old guard to summon La Magra. And to do that, they meet at this weird pyramid area. They have Blade. They've captured him. I honestly have completely forgotten how.
It's because they pop up on, just real quick, they pop up on Whistler,
that's right.
And they fuck him up. Yeah, they fuck up Whistler, and then they kidnapped Dr. Karen, and then when Blade shows up, and mind you, just to kind of slow down real quick. One, it's a pretty like brutal way that they like, you know, take out Whistler, but I love the kind of going in again with the horror elements. They leave like Blade this like bloody VHS tape, you know, that's like "Play Me" has like, you know, written on there, and he's like watching Deacon Frost's character like give him like this recording, and it's like from this grimy ass. It reminded me of Saw in a weird way, just the way it's shot, like just this grimy ass like CRTV that he's just watching it on, you know, before he like sets out to go try to find you know, Deacon and take him down, because, you know, he's like, "We got your girl, like come find me," and whatnot. I also want to make a quick note that in this time, or leading right up to that, Dr. Kieran has been developing what she's hoping is a cure for the vampirism. So that's just it's a plot point that's going to become relevant later. But she's attempting to, you know, create a cure for that, and also in the process makes this blue goo. That's the best way to describe it, like this blue serum that when you inject it in vampires, it's not a cure, but it blows them the fuck up. I'm only mentioning that now because that comes into play in the fight and also the final fight, and it's badass.
Yeah. And Blade at this point is also using some kind of substance to kind of like weaken his vampirism, to not let it take him over, essentially.
Yeah, suppress it.
Suppress it. Whistler injects him with it earlier in the film. You get that great fucking shot of him holding Whistler's hand and like squeezing it and like fucking like tensing up really good. Like that's great shit right there.
Convulsing.
Yeah, convulsing and everything. Yeah, and the part where Whistler has been killed essentially, and Blade's like, you know, just kind of like, you know, there with them for a second. It's a great, powerful moment. Wesley Snipes sells it really well. That is like a father figure for him. It's a great moment. So it goes off after Deacon Frost essentially gets captured, and they drain him of blood, basically. And in the process, also, he meets his mama, who's still alive for some reason, which is like something that they kind of just throw away in the movie, honestly.
So his mom comes in, and it's like revealed, because, you know, she was obviously bit, and we assume she died, but it turns out she was turned by Deacon, and she, this whole time she's been living with him as like just one of his, you know, many concubines, I guess. And we get this really, and this always kind of like stuck with me in this film, this really like Freudian scene in which Blade is like tied up to like this, you know, whatever the fuck monolith thing, being like, you know, about to be drained, and his mother comes up to him, and she's like just really sensually like kind of rubbing her face on him and like talking to him in this kind of like sultry like voice, again super weird and Freudian, but it adds to the overall like, again, sex and violence of the film. Like it's just the pathology is all running through this film. It's in like the DNA of this film.
It's super weird and Freudian and very uncomfortable, but I think it's a great way of showing like how this is his idea of probably what his mother is, or what she is now, is not real. Like, she is perverse. She is the undead now. She is not
literally
who he is. She is not his mother anymore. She is so far gone at this point. And that's why he has no problem absolutely murking her.
Yeah, and he does it in a, of course, very Freudian way by you know, stabbing her with like a bone or like a stake or something like that. And it's on that note again of like the sex and the pathology of like kind of sex and violence in this film. Before Blade like fucks up his, and like kind of almost implied fucks his mom with the stake and kills her. Right before that, he's freed by Dr. Karen, who like escapes like this pit, which has like this her ex-boyfriend in there, who's turned to this weird like ghoul. And I think it's really cool in that scene. But she escapes that little ghoul pit, finds Blade, releases him, and you know, as Deacon's doing all his like vampire hoodoo shit downstairs, and she, you know, this is probably the most sensual scene and kind of like sexual scene in the whole film. You know, Blade is weakened. He's drained of blood. He, you know, doesn't have his powers basically. And so Dr. Kieran, reveals the two puncture holes from the two bite marks in her neck. So these very like kind of like very fleshy, just holes in her neck, and then she, you know, she's like, Blade, you need a drink from me to get your strength back. So then he does, and it is I think perfect for a vampire film because it's a sex scene basically. Yeah, like Blade is like, you know, he's his muscles are like, he looks great, but he's like, you know, hunched over her, and then he starts suckling on her neck, and then that turns very intense, and he starts like gyrating as he's like feeding on her, and she is like, you know, giving gasp and moans, and eventually they both like what is essentially an orgasm. And it's again, it's very sensual and it's very psychosexual. And again, I think just perfectly fits the tone of like this weird Freudian horror element of the film. And it leads into the final most badass scene when Blade like is finishing, when he basically hits the nut button after sucking her off, and he just comes up just giving like a fucking anime scream, and then he starts just whooping ass after that.
And I just wanted to touch on really quick. I love that you bring up the sexual aspect of Blade feeding on Karen, because a big part, and I mean, we can discuss this one day whenever we discuss like a multiple vampire films or something like that. Sex is a huge part of the vampire film. The eroticism that comes with it. If you know people that have like a weird vampire fetish, it's because of movies like this.
Everybody wants to fuck a vampire.
Yeah, exactly. And it is the eroticism of it. And I'm happy they have it in this film, because that's what makes this a good genre film, and more than just a superhero film or a comic book film. It is a good action film. It is a good vampire horror film. You get those elements of the genre in there, and yeah, like Nick said, he fucking powers up and proceeds to whoop ass. And I just want to do a quick aside and just say, like, I love Donald Logue's little line where he's just like, "I'm gonna be a god. I'm gonna be a naughty god." I love
He's so
shit.
sleazy. I love
He's
it.
just eating that shit up. It's great. So yeah, we get to Blade whooping fucking ass all around that damn fucking area. It's so fucking cool.
yeah.
And by this point, Deacon Frost has been possessed by La Magra. And essentially what that means is like, what you think that means is that he'll erupt into a giant blood storm and like fight Blade as like some weird blood cloud, which is what happened in the original ending. They reshot that because it sucked. And all you get is fucking Stephen Norrington. And I mean, not Stephen Norrington, Stephen Dorff. That'd be funny if the fucking director came out.
Even Norrington wouldn't explode until after leaving Story Enjoyment.
So you get Stephen Dorff and you get Deacon Frost and Blade with just a little, like a fucking sword fight. You know, it's like, it's just that simple. You know, that's all you need to make this climactic, great action sequence. And man, they go all out, and like, I gotta say, like, the stunt work in this movie is fantastic, and nowhere is that highlighted better than in this scene where it's just two dudes crossing swords for 3 fucking minutes. It's great shit.
Again, the psychosexual allegories continue with them crossing swords at the very end. But yeah, no, this film, this final fight scene, like, fucks especially hard, because it's great leading up to it. The Blade fucking up all the goons, but then him and Frost just go in. They're not doing any bullshit. He's not turning some big goofy ass CGI monster. It's not a bunch of fucking green screen bullshit. It is just two dudes with real swords.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just two dudes with like real swords just fucking clanging and going at it, and they're cutting each other up, and Blade like cuts off Frost's hand, and he regrows it to show the power of La Magra, and it just ends basically with, and I mentioned this earlier, that serum that Dr. Kieran had developed, and he used it originally on some goons earlier, and they fucking turned to like weird. Yeah, they like turn to like a weird Akira like bloated like flesh like bombs, and then they explode in like really great practical effects, and then slash CGI mixed in, and then the final fight, because Blade is like cutting up Deacon, but he keeps regenerating. So how does he stop it? He takes this super coagulant of serum, and he like injects him like with 6 of them, and then in the second, or probably like the parallel next to it, most iconic and badass line in this film, you have Wesley Snipes. Deacon's over there, he's all fucked up, he's like full of like the serum, and Wesley Snipes throws up one of the syringes, and he says, "Some motherfucker's always trying to ice skate uphill," and then he does a karate kick, sends the fucking final syringe flying into Deacon's forehead, nails the motherfucker, and then he literally turns into like Akira and just starts bubbling up in flesh and becomes this huge bloated mass of like tumors and like growing flesh before he fucking pops like a goddamn balloon. And it is beautiful. It is the just peak Kino cinema.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
It's one of those moments where you just go like, God, I love movies.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Nothing. It doesn't mean that line. It doesn't matter that line makes no sense.
Well, no,
it's great. Goddammit!
You try and ice skate uphill. You can ice skate uphill. You can try as much as you want, but it's not. You can never do that. You can't ice skate uphill. It makes sense. It's a stupid line, but it makes sense. And the way Wesley Snipes delivers it is what's important.
Yes. Yeah, well, only Wesley Snipes can make something like that, like, work, where you're like, fuck yeah.
That's like
the motherfucker's always trying to ice skate uphill.
That's like where Joss Whedon just appeared on set one day to do some uncredited rewrites on the script. Like, who fucking did this?
If it was Joss Whedon, Blade would have been like, so that just happened.
That just happened.
That would have been the Joss Whedon version of this. Did that just happen?
Exactly.
Yep. Oh god!
And then Blade literally just kind of like runs off into the sunset. Like he saves Dr. Heron, and he says a few more like cool lines, and then he just dips before he ends up in fucking Moscow.
He runs off into the sunset. The sunset being Moscow. For just a great little fucking moment where it's like a vampire about to feed, and then there's just Blade at the end of this snowy hallway, sword ready. It's just fucking great. Oh, but does he say any?
He says some shit like, you know. He does. He says something like, let's dance, comrade, or some shit like that.
Oh, yes, he does. He says that. And then just cut to fucking credits. That's all you need, man.
God. Peak.
Peak.
Absolute fucking peak.
Yeah. Oh, God. I love this movie. I love this movie so fucking much. You need to watch this movie again if you haven't. It's fantastic. It's cinema. It is genre perfection.
Yes.
Truly, this is the best amongst us.
Yes. And people enjoyed it, too, because it made $131 million on a $45 million budget.
Good
Take
stuff.
us back to those, please. Take us back to those days when 131 million was a big success.
Yeah.
And it got good reviews, which is good because we were even talking about this before. The first screenings were disastrous, and they did major reshoots on this movie, like editing out the blood tornado for good reason. So it's one of those things where it's amazing it turned out as well as it did for late stage reshoots of the Climax. It's amazing. It's amazing that it's not a Fantastic Four 2015.
Right, yeah. And it speaks, I guess, to Stephen Norrington as a director. He took the reshoots in stride. You know, they made something better, I think, every time. Like, yeah, that blood, that scene, the original ending is available online. You can find it very easily. It is a mess. It is a disaster. It is like, we don't have enough money for these special effects, but they're telling us we have to do it, so we have to do it. It's bad. Glad they exercised that. On the other hand, though, like, I will say, like, the Moscow ending is perfect, absolutely, but it is kind of funny that the original ending had Morbius at the very end. That was strange.
God.
Yeah, where it's like it's Karen and Blade on top of like wherever this tunnel area was. They're above ground. They're talking about like, oh, more is coming. And he looks over. There's someone in the distance, and he goes Morbius, and then it ends, and it's like, that means nothing to anybody outside of comics.
The one with the sucky hands?
Right.
I wouldn't trade Blade 2 for anything because it's great.
Yes.
But how awesome would it be if Blade Trinity was just Blade versus Morbius?
Right.
If they like followed back to that in the third one, how cool would that be?
That would have been cool. I would have been down for that. I will say that like I'm fine with them cutting that from the original film because I gotta tell you, like, it's another case of it's like an Eternals thing where it's, you know, it's like, oh my god, Pip. It's like, who gives a fuck?
Who the fuck is a Pip?
Who the fuck is a Pip? Oh my god, it's Thanos' brother that you would only know about if you read the comics. And you're like, why is Harry Styles in this?
Yeah. And this opinion is coming from Morbius' strongest soldier, too.
Right,
like,
that's right. I'm fine with it.
Morbius out of the movie is saying a lot.
Hey, him being the main vampire in Blade Trinity probably would have been a great idea, or as a supporting one, because I actually love the idea of Blade fighting Dracula in your trilogy capper film. That's a great idea. But I'm now Morbius. But yeah, the film itself, fantastic, made good money for what it cost. I guarantee you probably made equal to what it made in the box office on home video. There's really no way to track it. There's no reports on the home video sales, but I can guarantee you this movie absolutely did like more than what Ghost Rider did. Ghost Rider made like $100 million in home video sales. This absolutely did more than that. So this movie made a shit ton. I guarantee it.
This DVD and VHS was everywhere back in the day. You could not escape it.
That fucking shot of Blade with the sword up, and he's got his fucking, you know, his leather jacket on. You got that weird insignia in the back. That was everywhere. You could not escape it. So yeah, Blade 1 was a huge success. It got us Blade 2. It got us Blade Trinity. Blade 2 did pretty good for itself. Also probably, I believe, a monster on home video as well. Blade Trinity, less successful. We'll get to that one day. I'm actually pretty excited to talk about that one when we get to it. there's a whole mess of issues with that movie, pretty much, and that leads us to today, where it's like the most recent Blade thing we've gotten is the Blade anime that came out in 2012. That's pretty okay. I'd recommend you check it out. It's pretty okay. And then his appearance in the post-credit scene in Eternals, and by that I mean it's Mahershala Ali giving a like one-line ADR session, and that's it, and that's all you got for 5 or 6 years, assuming the Blade solo is supposed to come out eventually. We'll see. And I guess we could talk
also,
about...
I want to add...
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to add real quick, we also have in the works, in addition to the Mahershala Ali potential maybe movie, possibly someday, is the studio behind the Dishonored franchise, which I fucking love, Arcane Leon. They are developing a recently announced Blade video game, which I have high hope for because it's a great studio and they make fantastic, stealth sims and things like that. And I'm really curious and really optimistic from the trailer that they revealed for it. So we'll see.
I can't wait to play it in 5 years because video game development takes fucking forever. And when they announce these damn things, it's like, we'll see you in 2030.
I can't wait to play some of my fucking PlayStation 6.
Yeah, right. So I know, Andy, there was something you said you wanted to save for the end of this in regards to like the future of Blade. I was curious what that was.
Oh, that's what I was going to talk about was the Mahershala Ali reboot. That is probably. I agree wholeheartedly with you. I don't think it's going to happen. If it does, it'll probably get whittled down to like a Disney Plus series or something, or he'll just be factored into Midnight Suns. They'll just skip the Blade movie entirely. I don't, with the state of where Marvel's going at this point, like I don't really have high hopes for it at all. Like if they couldn't pull off Moon Knight with Oscar Isaac, how the hell are they going to pull off Blade with Mahershala Ali? I had a little bit of hope when Nick Pizzolatto was writing it, but then that's gone.
That's completely fallen off. Yeah, they're completely rewriting it again. The director, no shade, doesn't have doesn't have a big filmography, doesn't have a lot to work with to base off of like, oh, he's a great choice for Blade. So it leaves it up in the air for how it's going to turn out. If it happens, I hope it does, just because, hey, more Blade in the zeitgeist is great. But at the end of the day, I'm just reminded of 11 years ago when Wesley Snipes got out of prison and basically said like, yeah, I'm down to do Blade 4. And they had talked with Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios about doing a Blade 4. And it was in the discussion around the time Iron Man 3 had come out, and they just decided not to do it at the time because this was the period when Marvel Studios was so anti playing with anybody else's toys. They were like, I don't want to play with that X-Men, I don't want to play with that Spider-Man, I want to make my own and it'll be better. And here we are 12 years later and we are still in the process of, oh, maybe it'll happen.
I think it's more likely than ever that Wesley Snipes will return as Blade in some sort of Secret Wars multiverse thing, because Marvel is taking everything from the past that people liked anyway.
Yes.
So it's basically
a true sign of a definitely not waning franchise.
Yeah, it's Toby, Andrew, the best parts of the Fox X-Men franchise, and probably Blade. Those will be the 4 things that they bring back.
Yep. Hey, you know what? That's fine. I would absolutely prefer that. And I'll just say on the Mahershala Ali Blade thing, there was the promise, I remember, when they announced the movie, like, yeah, it's going to be R-rated, man, we're going for it. And now it's just like, well, you don't necessarily need to make a Blade movie R-rated. That's the discussion now. So it's like, it's not.
Yeah, that's where it's kind of devolved from. And to go to my point earlier, how I mentioned the vulgarity of this film, the way it opens with multiple like F-bombs, a lot of like fucking, like literal fucking, and then just like a cacophony, nay, an orgy of blood in the opening act. No matter what, no matter if that potential project with Ali ever actually comes out, I guarantee it, and even in the most optimistic predictions, I guarantee it will never have the sauce of this first fucking movie. It will never even come close to having like the very specific aesthetic tone and just absolute sauce of this first film, and that's disappointing. I wish it was something else, but like you guys said, the modern state of Marvel, I just cannot see this company being able to produce or being willing to take the risk on making something with as much sincerity as like this film.
Can you imagine today's Marvel making a like $40 million movie, let alone a $40 million Blade movie?
God.
I wish.
They're like, that could fund 2 episodes of a Disney Plus show.
we could have not convincing She-Hulk CGI for that amount of money instead of like a fully realized good movie. But whatever. Just on the last bit of like Blade recommendations, I would recommend to all of our listeners, because it's hard to find Blade comics, like any that are really worth reading, because they're either very 90s or they're just hard to find. I would definitely recommend, if anybody wants to read Blade comics, seek out Blade the Vampire Slayer Black and White. That's what the trade paperback is called, Black and White. I'm looking at it on Amazon now. You can get it for $13 used. That collects a lot of his 70s magazine stories, and if you don't know the history, Marvel Comics published their darker characters in magazine format so that they weren't subject to the Comics Code Authority, so Punisher and various characters like that. Yes, exactly. So Blade got that treatment, and this paperback has a lot of those stories. Yes, the cover has him in the old leather and green, but that's probably the best place to start, and it's probably the best Blade comic. So that's what I would recommend.
That's a good place to start. If you want a Blade that's a little closer to this movie stylistically, there is the Guggenheim run from the 2000s. It's not great, but you can find it on like digital storefronts for relatively cheap. It's always going on sale for $2. So if you want a little bit of that, you can do that. Blade has popped up in a couple team ups and event comics since then in like the 2010s, but nothing really where it's like you need to read it, unfortunately. Blade, I think, as a character is something that worked so perfectly for the time period that it was in. Late 90s, 2000s, it was a trademark character of pop culture at the time. And I feel like any attempt since to replicate that is not just either never going to happen, or it's just not going to, it's going to fall on its face, because this movie changed the perception of that character. Because the perception of that character is, who the fuck is Blade? Or if you knew who Blade was, you're just like, why are they adapting this goofy ass looking character? This made Blade who Blade is, and every adaptation since is like, they're really not adapting Blade. They are adapting the 1998 Wesley Snipes Blade for the modern era. That is always the case going forward now. For better or worse, it's never going to be as good as it used to be for that.
Can you imagine Marvel Studios does a PG-13 Blade with Mahershala Ali where he's dressed like the 70s Tomb of Dracula Blade, and all the fanboys are soying out because they saw one cover of it on Google Images. They're like, oh, it looks like the original. They're going back to the original comics.
I'm just going to say immediately what turns me off is that the last time they talked about like the plot in any way was like, oh yeah, he's going to have the wise mentor figure who is from the UK that teaches him how to do vampire hunting. And I'm just like, okay, we're pulling from that stuff. Okay, whatever. And like, it ain't no Whistler. You ain't no Whistler.
Honestly, how cool would it be if just Mahershala Ali's Blade, he's been fighting vampires for 10 years, but now there's something else he has to fight. It's Werewolf by Night from the Disney Plus short that they did. Like,
they're not going to do it, but that would be cool. They're not going to do that because that's a great idea. So
it'd be better if they did, I promise you I won't get paid for it, which is the even thing that pisses me off even more.
Listen, what would have been a great idea is if in 2015 they essentially just did Logan but with Blade, which was what they were going to basically do at the time.
Oh man.
That was the idea, and I'm telling you that's the idea because they were going to do a comic run in the 2010s of Blade where he has a daughter and he's like helping her, and they were going to do that, and I guarantee you that was going to be the setup for what would be the film for Blade 4, but they didn't do it. The comic run mysteriously just never happened, the same way Blade 4 just mysteriously never happened. I'm like, it's probably again the case of I don't want to play with these toys because they're not mine. I didn't make them this way. So now things are different, but who knows? Yeah, my conspiracy of the period, of the time period. The 2010s sucked, in my opinion, in that respect.
My conspiracy is that Marvel doesn't give a shit about any of these street level heroes. No, yes, I said street level, not urban. It's interchangeable, but I'm using street level. They don't give a shit about any of these street level characters, whether it's Ghost Rider or Blade or Punisher or Daredevil. Yes. They don't care.
And because proof for that, and when we say Marvel Studios, maybe we're referring to one executive specifically, maybe not, who knows, maybe. But when we say that, the proof in the pudding is quite literally this: they didn't do a Blade movie in the 2010s, they canceled the Blade 4 movie that they were talking about, and all the street level characters got thrown to Netflix because the Marvel Studios executive did not give a shit about the street level characters and just signed them out to television. That's what happened.
even though when this bubble inevitably bursts, those are going to be the characters that it's easiest to make cheap movies about and still make them good. At least they're so that they're not so that people aren't tired of them. That's the only silver lining I can say, is that when we finally start making movies, we can do our 70s set Daredevil movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
So hey, at the end of the day, everybody. Oh, go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
Sorry. I just want to say I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one of the, again, just piling on praise on this movie. Can't stop glazing up this film. One of the things that I really appreciate about it, and again, kind of my earlier point of why this is important to me, seeing this film as a young black kid, is Wesley Snipes not only just looks fucking incredible, but the costume design in this movie is fantastic through and through. It is oozing with 90s aesthetic, but a good 90s aesthetic, and Wesley Snipes, not only does he look badass as hell and literally iconic with his black leather trench coat and the body armor, everything like that, but one aspect in particular, and this is the reason why every adaptation of Blade since then has been, like Marty said, modeled after Wesley Snipes, is my man has the sickest fade for his little, not even it's almost like a high top, but it gets kind of cropped and angled, and it just looks so sick. And then I think it's tattoos. I couldn't tell on the rewatch from the lighting. I couldn't tell if it was tattoos or they had etched in designs into his fade on the back, in the back of his head and on the sides. But it looks so sick, and I know that they was cooking with that, because the only other brother in the movie that's not one of the goons, a faceless goon, is just some random dude that Blade gets his garlic and supplies from, and it's a brother that has also a really sick fade with a bunch of designs and shit etched into it. I think he has braids too, but it just the black hair in this movie, when I saw it, when I noticed it, I was just yeah, this is we're cooking with gas right here. This shit is Kino.
Absolutely. I gotta say right now, hey, if you want to support this movie, there's a 4K release of it. It's really fucking good. Go check that out. Maybe it'll convince them to do a Blade 2 4K eventually. You can get the fucking trilogy for $10 on Blu-ray also. If you want more of this Blade, there was a 13-episode television series starring Sticky Fingers as Blade.
Oh, shit.
I would be remiss in not mentioning that. I believe it is a direct sequel to Blade Trinity, so there's that.
Oh man, in case you didn't have Spike TV back in 2007, watch it now by getting your 720p DVD copy of it.
Absolutely. So we hope you've enjoyed listening to us talk about Blade for about an hour and a half, honestly, which is about the perfect length to talk about such a fantastic film. Do you want to sign us off as you always do in such a spectacular fashion?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Again, a film of this caliber, much like Ghost Rider or Spider-Man, deserves nothing less. So, of course, we're going to glaze it up for, over 90 minutes. But we hope you enjoyed the ride. We hope you go check out Blade if you haven't seen it in a while, because, again, this shit is peak. It is a fantastic film. I cannot stop gushing about it if you couldn't fucking tell already. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Heroic Efforts. We hope you join us next week when we talk about our next, film, and may or may not be a good one. If we're on a high on this one, who knows what's in store for next week, but we hope you guys join us then. And with that, anything else, guys? Anything else you want to
add? My father would call me the Daywalker because I'm a ginger and he watched Blade a lot, so that's why I called myself Daywalker at the start. It's because that's literally what I was called as a child. So anyway,
I'm just going to say have fun ice skating uphill, everybody. Until next time.
All right, everybody. On that note, we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace. Hey, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It really helps us out. And be sure to tune in next week for more Heroic Efforts. Heroic Efforts is a No More Talking production. All rights reserved.